Okay, good evening everyone, those that are live and those that are across the screen. We are holding, believe it or not, just exactly 2 weeks away from Rosh Hashana. In 2 weeks from now at 8:05 on Monday evening, we'll probably be at the tail end of the beginning of Mariv. And we will be welcoming in a new year of Tav Shin Pei Aleph, 5,782. The last year, Tav Shin Pei Best, thank you. 5,782. Means that the old year will be over and the new year will be beginning. And Rosh Hashana is called a Yom Hadin. It's called a day of judgment. Now the simple understanding is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is reviewing the year that has passed. He's going through all of our actions, all of our words, all of our thoughts even. He's seeing our mitzvahs, he's examining our averas, and he's deciding on this day of judgment what is going to be with our ultimate din, the ultimate judgment that he is deciding for us. Are we going to be placed inside the Sefer, the book of Chaim of life, or God forbid will we be placed in the book of not life, the book of death? So it's a Yom Hadin, it's a day of judgment. And again, the simple understanding is Hashem is reviewing all of the actions of the previous year. Otherwise, what is He judging us on? However we did, so then we have to own up for it, and He has to evaluate, and we get judged on such a thing. However, Rav bin Ali Shor teaches us a very tremendous insight, which is what he calls a Pesach Tikva, a great opening of hope for everyone. And that is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not really judge us per se on the year in review. And He doesn't judge us on what we're going to become in the up and coming year, even though He knows very well in His crystal ball how we're going to look. Rather, the ultimate judgment of Rosh Hashana that is taking place is Bahu Hayoim Asher Husham, on that day itself, how a person looks in the eyes of Hashem. How we behave on Rosh Hashana, how we talk to each other on Rosh Hashana, how we spend our time on Rosh Hashana. Like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch himself writes, we learned it this morning, for anyone that is keeping up to date with our daily WhatsApp, that on the afternoon of Rosh Hashana, a person goes and they do something called tashlich. They cast away all their sins into the water. And then they go to shul for mincha. And very often we get to shul, it's early. Maybe 20 minutes early, half an hour early, 40 minutes early. And people are sitting around and they're shooting the breeze, as the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch likes to say. Says the Kitzur, I'm warning you, it's the holiest day of the year. It's the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching over and He's judging us, making decisions. Don't sit around and shmooze around on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashana afternoon. Rather take a Tehillim, take a sefer, a book off the shelf, and spend the time wisely so that you maximize the potential of this very holy day. Why? Because Hashem is judging us, not on what took place last year. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is judging us on the day of Rosh Hashana itself. Now, that being said, there's something very fascinating, which is why we are here tonight. The majority of Rosh Hashana, 2 days, which begins at night, goes into the morning, into the afternoon, and back into the next night, and then again into the next morning and the next day. The majority of the entire day in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is judging us, deciding our fate and our future for the up and coming year, most of the time, we are in shul and we are davening. That means the way that we appear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashana is not how many checks of tzedakah we're able to write. He's not looking how many classes and shiurim that we can go to, how much chesed we can be involved with in our community. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not watching how much we're going to interact with other people on the day of Rosh Hashana. The ikr, the main thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching us on Rosh Hashana is, how well do you daven? How do you daven? Do you understand what it is that you are saying in the words of tefillah? How many times are you checking, as we all do? Are you looking, how much longer is this MACHZOR going to be? We start fumbling through the pages over here. Really? It's another 89 pages? The Chazan's singing another song? Doesn't he know we sang enough songs already today? What's he talking about? HaKadosh Baruch Hu has designed a day, 2 days to be judged, where he says the main activity that you are going to be involved in for those 48 hours is possibly 15, 16 hours or more of tefillah. In the yeshivas, in the great Bati Midrashim in Eretz Yisrael, in New York, in Lakewood, in Baltimore. So Musaf of the day of Rosh Hashana goes on at least until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if not even longer. Which means that from the time that you went, it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, by the way. We're late over here. We started at 8 o'clock. We finished early at 2 o'clock. So that's already, we're cutting it down. But in the yeshivas, in the Hasidic citadels of Torah, they are starting at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they are lasting till 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What about eating? There's no time to eat. By the time they come home and they make kiddush and they eat a little bit of food, guess what? They look at their clocks. Time to go back for mincha. They run back to the shul. They daven mincha, and mincha then goes into Marav, and Marav comes home very late. So they're davening probably 30 hours over Rosh Hashana. The bulk of the day is our davening, which means that if we're not prepared for the marathon of tefillah, of prayer that we have on Rosh Hashana, if we are not aware of what these words, of what they mean, if we don't have a little bit of kavanah, a little bit of intention, a little bit of understanding of a deeper connection to our tefillahs of Rosh Hashana, so then how in the world is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to judge us favorably? If a person thinks that, as we've said many times in the past, they're going to roll out of bed on Rosh Hashanah morning, and they're going to mosey into shul and open up the MACHZOR for the first time and think, yes, I'll get into it. Everybody knows that it doesn't happen. Most people, if they're honest with themselves, without any preparation, hopefully by Musaf of the second day, they begin to feel a little bit connected to the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. But with preparation, and with seeing the words beforehand, and with knowing a little bit of the ideas that we are describing and talking about in our tefillahs, then a person already from tefillah number 1, Mariv, of Rosh Hashanah night, which in 2 weeks will be during this time, you're already connecting into the world of prayer, into the world of din, of the judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making. And therefore, I would like to, this evening, to describe a little bit the glory of tefillah, of what is specifically related to the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. And then next week, Bez Hashem, we're going to pick out some of the high points of the davening itself, so that we should just be prepared as best as we can. The Poskim speak about the idea that whoever is the one that is chosen as the chazan to lead the davening, they must be fluent and fluid in the words of prayer. That means before Rosh Hashanah comes along, they must already be looking in the MACHZOR. Why? Because when they stand up, and they are an agent on behalf of the people, and they are the one, the conduit, the bridge between the tzibur and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they are going and beseeching Hashem, they have to make sure that the words that they're saying are meant with their heart and with their soul, and they understand what there is coming out of their mouths as well. And so we are no less. We are representing ourselves. We are talking to the Ribbono Shel Olam. We are saying hundreds and hundreds and thousands of words of tefillah, dozens and dozens of brachas, of blessings, so many ideas, so many bakashas, so many requests, so much asking for chayim, for life. And therefore it behooves us as well that we must understand what we are saying and doing. Rav Chaim Friedlander brings down the following idea. And he says that if a person Tefillah, he says over here, Yedua Maimer, it's known, the following statement. Tefillah b'lei kavana, a person who prays without kavana, without intention. And we'll call intention, doesn't have to be Kabbalistic. You don't have to know all of the kavanas of the Arizal, who was the master of the kavanot, of all of the intentions that are in the Zohar, in the loftiest of worlds. We're not talking about that. Simple understanding of the words that you are saying. Someone, tefillah b'lei kavana, someone who davens without kavana, is keguf b'li neshama, it's like a body without a soul. A person who doesn't know what they're saying is like looking at a body without a soul, as he goes on to say. If a person doesn't understand the words that are coming out of their mouth, then you're like a chirping bird. Do you understand what a bird is saying? He's chirping around. He makes a lot of noise. Do you understand the words? Does the bird himself have deep intent? Does he have deep ideas when he's whistling to his mate over there? No, nothing. He's just a bird chirping. Says the Rav Chaim Friedlander, a person who comes to davening and doesn't understand the words, you're like a chirping bird. Then we'll get judged on Rosh Hashana as a chirping bird as well, which is certainly not what we want. So therefore it behooves us, as we're saying over here, to spend the time wisely. There's a very beautiful sefer. It's called Avodas HaTefillah. I think in English it's called Pathway to Prayer. It is on the highly recommended reading list that a person is their prayer companion, that a person should take along with them into Rosh Hashana. It's our weaponry. It is our schus that we will have. If you have this book, the Hebrew might be difficult, but they have it in English as well. And he basically goes word by word through the prayers of the MACHZOR, and he describes in simple form what everything there means. Now, it might mean that your Shemona Esrei will be longer than it normally is. That's okay. Where are you going to go anyway? You have no place to go. As we said, the main body of our prayer, think about it also, the mitzvah that everybody associates with Rosh Hashana is the shofar. That's the mitzvah. When a person thinks about Rosh Hashana, they think about shofar. Shofar itself is small compared to the hours that we are davening. And also the shofar itself only finds its way into the Beis HaMidrash, into the shul, during davening. It comes at the very onset of Musaf. It goes throughout the Musaf prayer itself, and it's at the conclusion of the Musaf right before the final Kaddish, or in the middle of the final Kaddish. Which means that even the shofar, which is the highlight of the day for many of us on Rosh Hashana, even that pales in comparison to the words of tefillah, to the words of prayer that we're going to say. So in this sefer called Avodas HaTefillah, he has a very beautiful introduction to put us in the mood of standing in prayer for hour after hour after hour, pushing ourselves to the end to be able to appreciate and value what it is that we are doing. And he says over here the following: Kol Adam chayav lechavev b'tfilasai. Every single person is obligated to have kavanah, intention, when they are davening. Ubebrachais, in their blessings. Ubekol ma sheyikra mikol davar shebekedusha. Anything that they read which is kedusha, they say kaddish, they answer baruch hu, baruch shemai, whatever they're doing, there should be intention behind what they are saying. Why? So he says, lo hoisiv kavanu lefashresh b'maisav. A person should increase their intentions and examine their deeds. Ulevakesh rachamim min hamelech hayoshev ladun b'yosav. And they should ask mercy from the king who is judging his creations. V'sifrei chayim v'sifrei mesim besuchim lefanav. The books of life and the books of death are opened in front of Hashem. Al kein tiknu tefillah madbe'er ka'omer bedin v'yeradu. And therefore, Hashem, the Chachamim, the sages, fixed all the words of prayer so that we are like someone that is standing in judgment, and we are trembling kol gufa, our body, ve'avar, and our limbs, b'milos bekriyas hashemais, when we say our Kodesh Baruch Hu's name, v'yizkar v'yashuv el Hashem, and then by reading the words of tefillah, of prayer, and understanding what it is that we are saying, understanding the magnitude of the day of Rosh Hashana, then a person will remind themselves what we are doing, the judgment that is going on, and we will return to Hashem. Umishe'em mechaven kan, someone who doesn't have the kavanah, the intention over there, so then his tefillos, his prayers, they are empty words, as we said before. So the purpose of prayer, anybody who knows the word tefillah, is from the language of lehis palel. And lehis palel doesn't only mean to daven, to pray. It means that a person is supposed to think. It's another way to say in Hebrew that we are to think. It is, I think the way in English is inflexive, if that's the right way. Reflexive. It's reflexive that a person is going inside of themselves and they are thinking, which means that you have hours and hours and hours to think on Rosh Hashana. You're not in a rush to get the words out. You can take your time. The chazan will start without you before you finish your Shemona Esrei. And if you take your time and you go slowly through the words and you think about what is being said, and you have your art scroll MACHZOR with all of the beautiful commentaries on the bottom, or your Metzuda, which is line by line across from each other, or any other sefer of your choice that's going to give you an insight into the words of prayer, so then you will think what is going on, because all the words, as we're going to see next week, all of the words of the MACHZOR are to give us the insight on what exactly is taking place on Rosh Hashana. What does it mean that we are asking for life? What does it mean that we are standing in a balance? What does it mean that Hashem is deciding? The haunting words of Unasan Teikif, which we will perhaps get to next week, where we say the words, Mi yichye v'mi yamos, who will live and who will die. Last year when Rosh Hashana started, nobody could imagine Mi yamos, who was going to die this year. Nobody could imagine all the tragedies that were brought to this world up until the very end, just in Denver, Rahman al-Islam, what took place with this yeshiva boy. Nobody could imagine. Did anybody imagine that there would be a boy in yeshiva that would end up getting caught in this, whatever took place over? Did anybody imagine? But when we say those words, mi yichye or mi yamas, who will live and who will die, it's for real. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really deciding on this day who is going to have a peaceful year, who is going to have an unsettling year, whose business is going to prosper during COVID, and who is going to suffer beyond belief and have to close their doors and file for bankruptcy during the year and a half already that we are struggling in this country. It's reality. And therefore he's saying that if a person will take their time during the davening of Rosh Hashana and tell themselves before you start, I'm not in a rush. I've got no place to go anyway. And if I take my time, the words will begin to impact me. They will change the way that I'm thinking, not only about the words in the MACHZOR, but the way that I'm thinking about myself, the way that I think about my relationship with Hashem, the way that I think about what I want to accomplish for the up and coming year, the goals that I want to set for myself, the things that are within my reach and maybe that are outside of my grasp, but yet if I push myself, perhaps I'll be able to get there. All of the words of our tefillah on Rosh Hashana are able to bring us to this tremendous level where we are a lehispalel, we are someone that is deeply thinking about ourselves, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our families, our tzibor, Klal Yisrael, the suffering that took place this year, the people that are still suffering. That's what our tefillahs are all about. And when we begin to look at the words and understand them, all of it comes into fruition. Now the Gemara tells us in Brachos that tefillah, that prayer, is something that is oimdim berumah shel olam. Prayer itself is something that stands in the rumah, in the heights of the world, which means it is l'mayla min hateva, the fact that a person could down here in this world open up his lips, say holy words, and those words can go up into the Shemayim, connect with oilamos, with worlds, and make a mapecha, turn things around in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's beruma shel olam. It's in the heights of this world. It goes far beyond what a person could accomplish regular down here. And that being said, the Arizal, as we mentioned, he has many, many kavanas, many deep mystical concepts and ideas that he says are behind every single word, that if you have this kavanah for this word, you'll affect that spiritual world. And if you have this kavanah for that word, you're going to affect that spiritual world. We don't have to worry about these things. It's beyond this. We can't understand that. However, it's brought down from the Noda B'Yehuda, one of the great, great halachic authorities of his time. He says the following words: Da kavanu hu rak perush hamilos. When we talk about intent, kavana, intention, that when we are davening, it's only referring to the explanation of the words, definition of the words. What does Baruch mean? What is Ata? What are you, Hashem? What does it mean? Zachrenu l'chaim, remember me for life. It doesn't have to be deep, mystical, beyond one's abilities. Simple explanation. V'kol tikunim l'mayla. And all of the tikkunim, all of the corrections in the spiritual worlds that will come from our prayers, nasim me'alehem, they will come on their own. So you just try to say the words without rushing through it. You just try to say the words and understand what you are saying, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do the rest. Meaning, like tshuva, we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will extend his hand to the person who tries to return to him, even beyond where the person themselves is able to reach. You try to do tshuva, you can only get over here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu reaches down his hand and he pulls you all the way up, so you'll be able to do a full, complete tshuva. Says the Noda B'Yehuda, you open your mouth and you daven the words. You pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu these simple explanation of the words that you're saying. Leave the rest up to Hashem. You want a good year? You want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to accept your prayers? Just do your job. What is our job? Our job is to try to understand the words that we are saying to the best of our ability. And he brings from the Meiri, who was one of the great Rishonim, lived probably sometime after the Rambam, but in that Tekufa, in that period. And the Meiri says the following idea, a beautiful idea. What we might think the opposite, the Meiri says this is the way that we should look at our prayers. He says the kavan the bizazman tzarich lis ayre by betachlis is ayros. Since during the times of Rosh Hashana, it's time to wake up. It's time to get inspired. It's time to be enthusiastic about serving Hashem, doing mitzvahs, living our life in the proper way. Chazal tiknu sheyechadshu b'kol habrachos. Chazal, our sages, they were masakin, they fixed that they were going to make a whole new set of tefillah, of prayers for us to say on Rosh Hashana. La'oiver es ha'adam, to awaken us, jolt us, so to speak, the ksheyesh chidush mechuvanim yoser, in order that since there's something new, and we have to pay closer attention, and we have to try to understand what is being said in there, it can bring a person to actually more kavana, more intention, because our curiosity is piqued and we are focusing more on the words so that we should understand what we're saying. Meaning, if the prayers would be regular the way that we have, for example, on a Monday or a Tuesday, even if we would have the regular prayers that we have for Shabbos, we're used to those prayers already. So it wouldn't strike us as something that we have to invest a lot of time and energy into. The words wouldn't catch us. Wow, that's an interesting idea. That's something new. It's what I say every Tuesday. It's what I say every Shabbos. So what's the big deal? So Chazal said, no, on Rosh Hashana is a day of what we call Hisoiros. It's a day of spiritual elevation. It's a day when we said before we have to be on our best. We got to be at the top of our game. 48 hours that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking down on us and He's judging us. What's our behavior like on Rosh Hashana? So we're going to be blah? We're going to be the old fogies that we are, walking, schlepping in the shul every single day, or on Shabbos, on a regular Yom Tov, where there's a little bit of inspiration but not enough? Or we're going to come in fired up on Rosh Hashana. Says the Meir, you know what Chazal did in their chachma, in their wisdom? They gave us a machzor. Only by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur do we have a machzor. No other Yom Tov has a whole machzor like this. Why? Because they want to jar our vision and our understanding of tefillah, of prayer. They want us to stop. Whoa, there's a lot of words over here. That's a lot to say. There's a lot of ideas that I'm not familiar with. And therefore, I'm going to take my time as I go through the machzor, and I'm going to start reading the words, and I'll think to myself, that's fascinating. When my grandmother, Aleh Shalom, was on the final days of her life, she was not a particularly religious woman, but she had a sense of amunah. I went to visit her in the hospital, and I said Tehillim with her. And she already, Saif Yamav, towards the end of her life, I think she lived maybe another 24 hours after this. And when a person is in that state, the neshama already, which for many years is blocked by the body, the neshama starts coming to life. And they start hearing things and seeing things and saying things that perhaps they would never say in their lifetime. So I brought with me a Sefer Tehillim, and I photocopied for her the words in English so she would understand what I was saying. And I believe that I read the words of Mizmor Dovid, Hashem ro'i lo yechsar. Hashem is my shepherd, I will not lack. Chav Gimel, 23 of Tehillim, what we sing on Shalosh Shudas time. A very deep, deep words of King David. And I'm saying the words in a voice that I felt would be ma'ara, would awaken her, would be something meaningful. And she's reading the words together with me in English. And when I finished saying the Tehillim, she looks at me and she says, these words are incredible. These words are incredible. Do you hear what he's saying? And she's looking at me with this wonderment of like a child. Like for the first time in her life, she heard what HaKadosh Baruch had to say. We should be standing on Rosh Hashana with the wonderment of a child who is looking at the words and the meanings of our prayers in the MACHZOR, like we're hearing the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, perhaps for the first time in our life. We know that the avodah, the work that we do on Rosh Hashanah is we're being mamlech Hashem. We're coronating Hashem as the king over the world, and we are crowning him as the king over ourselves. The more that you recognize who the king of this world is, the closer that we get into his presence, into his Dalet Amis, his cubits of space, the nearer that we get to the omniscience and the awe-inspiring moments of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, so then the greater is going to be our desire to say, that's my king, I want to be mamlech him, I want to crown him over me. Through the MACHZOR that we read on Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, as we will see, it gives us such an awareness, it opens our eyes to be able to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how he runs the world, what he wants from us, what he expects of us, and how we should live our lives in the up and coming year. And when we do that, says the Meiri, that's exactly why they changed all the words of our prayers. So that you should be caught off guard, and you'll realize, I can't daven Baal Peh by heart, Rosh Hashanah. Maybe on Tuesday, I run in for a mincha, I'm running late. Even without a siddur, I could probably get the words out of my mouth. Ashrei, for sure, I could probably say without looking inside the siddur. When it comes to the MACHZOR, I can't do that. There's so many words, so many concepts. I forgot them from last year. So I'm going to spend my time, I'm going to go through it wisely. And when I do that, I'm going to be able to reach this pinnacle of recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this mispalel, thinking about deeper inside of myself. And therefore, when I'm davening all those hours on Rosh Hashanah, and Hashem is giving me a judgment, he's judging me, what's the judgment? It's going to be for a person who is someone that is concerned with the Ribbono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants people in His world that are concerned with Him. That's what He's looking for. And through the MACHZOR, we are able to get to that level where we show Hashem, we are concerned about you. He goes on further, and he says the following, and that is that he writes over here from the Tzlach, also one of the great halachic authorities and Gaonim of the previous generations. He says, Keshemispalel b'Rosh Hashana b'kavana. When a person davens on Rosh Hashana b'kavana, with intention, malo u'mesakin kol atfilos. Listen to this amazing words over here. He elevates and he corrects all of his prayers, shel kol HaShanah, from the entirety of the year. Shelo hispalel b'kavana, that you did not pray with kavana, with intention. Now, if you davened everything b'kavana the previous year, so then these words of the Slach don't apply to you. This Rosh Hashanah is just going to be elevating Rosh Hashanah prayers. But if you're like me, and I would imagine 99.99999% of the rest of Klal Yisrael, who knows full well that we certainly don't pray all of our prayers every single day with intention and kavanah. So listen to what the prayers of Rosh Hashanah do. If you daven Rosh Hashanah with the best kavanah that you can, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes all of your prayers from this previous year, since last year Rosh Hashanah until now, and He says, I'm going to elevate all of those prayers. And although that when you said them and they escaped your lips, you were thinking about something else, you weren't paying attention, you know how it is, it's like when you're driving in the car and you're on the phone, and the next thing you know, you pulled up in front of your house, and you have no idea how you got there. How did I get home already? I just left work 45 minutes. How did I get home? The other night, I was very embarrassed. I had to go pick my daughter up from the airport, and I thought the flight was coming in at one time, then they got in early, so they're coming in early, so I jump in the car, and I'm driving, and I get on the phone while I'm driving, and I got on the wrong freeway. And I'm driving, like, where am I? I'm on the wrong freeway. And then I had to get off, and Baruch Hashem, I made it there, it worked out. Baruch Hashem, Hashem has perfect timing, it all worked out in the right way. But we go through a Shmoneh Esrei, and the next thing we know, like this, and then 3 times, we're done. How did I get there? How did I get to the finish already? Rosh Hashanah, you can't do that. Because Rosh Hashanah, there's so many words, there's so many ideas. Says the Tzlach, if you do it wisely, you'll fix up all of those prayers that you had that didn't work for you in the previous year. The Az, Yiskablu kol atfilos ha'elu she'lefnei zeh nidchim. And therefore, all of the prayers that you said last year, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was deichi, pushed them away because they weren't really so good, they weren't so powerful, they weren't so impressive in the eyes of Hashem. Guess what? HaKadosh Baruch Hu converts all of those prayers into impressive tefillahs in the eyes of Hashem, and He accepts every single one. So you're not just davening on Rosh Hashanah, your Rosh Hashanah prayer, you are actually fixing up all of the prayers of the entire year. What a schos. What an incredible thing. And he writes over here, Sheyasim nafsha b'chapai. Therefore, put your heart, put your soul in your hands. Lechavin karoi, to have the proper intentions. Ubezeh ma'alim atfilos hapsulo shekol hashana, and you'll elevate all of the puzzle, all of the unaccepted prayers of the previous year, they'll all become accepted on Rosh Hashanah. That's a tremendous, tremendous thing. And I think by the Hasidim they say that the mincha of Erev Shabbos, a Friday afternoon, the mincha of Erev Shabbos, it could be misak and it could correct all of the prayers from the previous week. So if we didn't do that on every single mincha, that means we have Marev, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Marev, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha. We have 8 tefillahs of Rosh Hashanah to fix up all of the prayers of the previous year. But we're not done yet, because he has a little bit more than he says like this. And he says, now that we understand that the prayers of Rosh Hashana are so prominent and so important. Besides the fact that they can fix up the previous year. Our entire future is dependent upon the prayers of Rosh Hashana. Because through our prayers, the judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is deciding is going to be paskind, it will be decided. And therefore there's such an obligation that we have to try our best to have kavanah. Again, we have to be realistic with ourselves. Nobody is going to have kavanah intention from beginning until the end. And if you go into davening with that intention, you'll be sadly let down probably by the time that you get 3 words into Mariv on the first night. Because everybody knows we can't do it. But everybody knows they can do it. Because everybody knows that as long as we are trying, and we are making effort, and we are trying even maybe in every single bracha, one word, a little extra kavanah, one idea that resonates in our mind, one reflexive annotation or whatever it might be inside of us that allows us to understand what the words of tefillah are, so then we have accomplished and we have achieved. We're fixing up the previous year, and we are now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking at us and He's deciding what's going to be in the up and coming year. And if a person does not examine the meaning of the words of the MACHZOR before Rosh Hashana, kasha ma'oid l'chavin kedeboy, it's very, very difficult for a person to have the proper kavanah, the proper intention. Chazal tell us in the Gemara that all of the imahais, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, well, Leah was not, but all of our matriarchs, except for Leah, they were all barren, and they all desired to have children, and for all of them it took quite some time. So the Gemara asks, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu do that? These are the mothers of Klal Yisrael. They're supposed to bring on in the new generation, supposed to bring the predecessors of the Jewish people. Why would He make it so difficult to have children? And the Gemara says, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mis'aveh tefilasan shel tzadikim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu desires the prayers of the righteous. He desires the prayers of the righteous. That means His taiva, what He dreams about, what He enjoys more than anything in this world, is when He hears tzaddikim daven to Him and ask and ask and ask and ask and recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do anything. Hashem can change one's destiny. He can elevate them up to a higher level. He can take gezeres that are bad and He can knock them out of the way and bring brachas to the person's life. On Rosh Hashana, what has HaKadosh Baruch Hu given us? He's given us 2 days to daven over and over and over and over again. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashana, He's mis'aveh tfilasan shel tzadikim. He desires the prayers of the righteous. Every single one of us on Rosh Hashana, again, if we play our cards right, we prepare in advance as much as we can, and we come to Rosh Hashana, we get enough sleep, we have enough energy, we put in our focus and our concentration, so then Hashem has a desire to hear the prayers that we're going to say. And through the tefillahs that He has given us, He's granted us, gifted us this whole MACHZOR for us to be able to utter in His presence. It's all because He wants through the prayers that we will become a righteous individual. And a person who stands out as a righteous individual, a tzaddik or a tzaddikis on Rosh Hashana, they are the ones then that are going to have their tefillahs answered. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only going to clean up the entire year's worth of prayers where there wasn't enough kavanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to paskin, He's going to decide on our lives, the Piskei Torah, the wonderful good decrees for all of us. There's a beautiful Ma'aser which took place quite some time ago with a tzaddik by the name of Rav Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz. He was from he passed away, I think, it could be already 10 years ago. He was the Rebbe of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, just to show you the level that we're talking about of this person. And there was a family in Eretz Yisrael the mother got very, very ill. She had the machla, Rahman al-Islam, and her situation, her health was deteriorating day by day. And they had a chasana planned for right after Sukkot of that year, for their daughter was getting married. She came to the doctor shortly before the Yom Tov of Sukkot began. When the doctor ran all of the testing and all the numbers and everything, he told the woman, I feel so bad for you. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but based on the numbers and based on derech hateva, the way that the world works, you probably have not more than about a week left to live. I'm sorry to tell you. Now this is very, of course, disheartening and painful for the mother and the father to hear. But even more painful for the mother was that her daughter's getting married after Sukkot, and according to the doctor, she's not going to make it until after Sukkot. So they had the following shaila. And the question was, could they make a chasana, could they make a wedding on Sukkot itself? Not on Yom Tov, but on Chol HaMoed. Could they make a wedding, and therefore the mother could be there to walk her daughter down to the chuppah? Could they do such a thing? What is the shaila? The question is that the Gemara tells us, Ein simcha b'simcha, we do not mix one joyous occasion with another one. And therefore all extraneous celebrations of joy are really us, we're not allowed to do them on Chol HaMoed. We don't make weddings at all on Chol HaMoed. We wait until after Yom Tov is over, because we don't want to take away from the joy of the Yom Tov and of Chol HaMoed. So it's a big shaila. And they didn't know what to do. So they went to Rav Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz to ask him, what are they allowed to do? Can they make a chasana on Chol HaMoed? And Rav Michal Yehuda sat with the mother and the father. And if I'm not mistaken, the chassan and the kala came to that room as well. And they asked him the shaila. When he heard the shaila, he was a very sensitive person. He broke down, he started crying. These are the questions that people are asking. And he pulls out the Gemara, and he pulls out the Rishonim, and he pulls out the Shulchan Aruch. And he starts looking and looking and looking and looking and looking. And he says to the family the following. He says, it could be that I could find a very valid reason in halacha why you could make a chasana, make a wedding on Chol HaMoed. It could be that I have a reason why you could, and it wouldn't be wrong. He said, but I see that you are people of deep amunah and deep faith. And I have another suggestion. My suggestion is that all of us that are in this room right now, we dive into the Ribbono Shel Olam. And we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the depths of our hearts that He should give the mother life, so she should be here through the Yom Tov of Sukkot, and she should be around in this world to walk her daughter down to the chuppah. And he pulled out Tehillim, and everybody pulled out a Sefer Tehillim, and the bechiyos, the crying that was going on in that room, everybody davening for the refuah, for the health of this mother. And after quite some time of tefillah, of davening, so Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz looked at everyone, he says, Al tidag, don't worry. You'll make it through Yom Tov, you'll be here for Chol HaMoed, you'll be there for Simchas Torah. And we'll all watch you walk your daughter down to the chuppah. And that is exactly what happened. the mother had a surge of health throughout Yom Tov, throughout Chol HaMoed. The chuppah, the chasana took place the day after Yom Tov was over. She walked her daughter down to the chuppah, and I believe, if I remember the story correctly, after the Sheva Brachas was over, the mother passed away. We should never underestimate the koyach of our tefillah. We should never underestimate what we could accomplish on 48 hours of a Rosh Hashana, 2 days, 8 tefillahs that we have to open our mouths and our hearts and our souls to the Rabbi Shalom and ask Him, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Zacharenu l'chaim, remember me for life. You should grant us another year where you write us and you sign us and you seal us in the book of Chaim Tovim, of good life. And all of the ideas of being Mamlech Hashem, of coronating HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All the ideas that His presence will fill up the entirety of this world, as we're going to see. The enemies should be destroyed. Klal Yisrael should be victorious. Hashem's Mashiach should come to this world, and we should know the fruition and the shleimus, the completion of creation. If a person davens this year with just a bit more kavanah than we ever did before, that's the greatest zechus that we have on the glorious days of Rosh Hashana. So we're just beginning in our commentary. Next week, everybody should bring a MACHZOR. I'll have those of you that are live here in the shul, I'll provide you with MACHZOR, but those of you that are at home, please bring a MACHZOR next week. Art School MACHZOR would be preferable because I'll use that page numbering and we'll look through it together. And the Be'ez Hashem, as it says over here, if we will utilize our prayers of Rosh Hashana in the proper way, then when HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks down on us on those 2 days of din, of judgment, how could He not judge us favorably? When He sees people that want more Ribono Shel Olam in their life, to get closer to Him and be more awe-inspired with every single day of the up-and-coming year, Hashem says, that's exactly the kind of person that I want in this world. May we be Zeichem Yetz Hashem, all of us, families, loved ones, and all of Klal Yisrael, to be signed and sealed in the book of good and sweet life.
Recording stopped.